I'm Dorothy Rowe, and the video you're about to watch is a clip from a live webinar. If you enjoy the content of this video, please like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your comments. Thank you. So this question comes up. I'm experiencing transitioning from my individual self to a more vast presence, to universal self. Congratulations. My human ego self is frightened of losing itself. Oh, so could you bring some clarity to how to go through this purification process? I love this question. When individual self, yeah, right, other people love this question. So it's a great question. Individual self and universal self are not really different from one another. They are parts of a spectrum of self. That ego embraces and encompasses the ability for your consciousness and your awareness to penetrate all the parts of creation. And our awareness does that. It's one of the cool things about being human, and that awareness, as I mentioned right at the beginning, that awareness is sort of like the tool of energy healing because we're focusing it in a specific way to get a specific effect. Well, in this case, what we're seeing is that individual awareness is the interpretation of myself when my awareness is coming through my senses of perception and is coming through this present moment, through this present body right here. We say, well, how do I find if we call ego self, sense of self, how do I find myself? Well, I find myself because I'm the witness behind the experiences that I'm processing through these senses of perception right now. But we know that that's not the only place through where awareness flows. That awareness also can flow out to the ends of the universe. It can flow forward and backward through time. Awareness isn't always just filtering through the gross senses of perception, right? Awareness is flowing through, it can go anywhere. Awareness is boundless and it moves the fastest of the fast, infinitely faster than the speed of light, right? So there's a question of how to experience the witness. We'll just take a moment. And we'll just take a moment and bring awareness into the present moment, just right here, right now. Scan the body. You can scan your body. You can scan your senses of perception. Your ears are hearing my words. Maybe your eyes are looking at the screen and looking at me, or maybe they're looking at something else, doesn't matter. Maybe you're eating lunch. Doesn't matter. Whatever the senses of perception are taking in at this moment, who is the sensor? Who is sensing? Who is putting all the senses of the eyes and the ears and the smells and the mouth and the sense of touch all together in one place? That's the individual witness. The one crying, oh, you're so sweet. You're so sweet. Yeah, it's a precious time. It's a precious time. So, but that inner witness, that inner self also can focus awareness anywhere. And we have potential as human beings, and our awareness has potential as human beings to come through every single point in creation simultaneously. We can come through everybody, everyone, everywhere. We can feel all the way out to the ends of the universe and feel the whole universe. We as little individual humans can hold the whole universe in our awareness. And we can hold the whole universe, and we can hold every point in the universe at the same time. And that is also within the range of self. And so that level, that sense of self is like universal self, but it's a really important part of ourself, but it isn't the only part of ourself that matters. Like the whole spectrum, from the most biggest universal sense of self to the smallest individual expression of self, like they're all really, really important. And they work together collectively as a spectrum of self that allows us to function efficiently in this world. Without the individual self, we would not enjoy life. And one of the reasons that a lot of spiritual systems encourage destroying the self and losing the self and getting rid of the individual self and so forth. The reason those systems do that is the same individual self that enjoys life also doesn't enjoy life. It has moments where it doesn't enjoy life, which is the topic of today's session, because purification comes at that moment. That's the marker. One of the markers of purification is it's that moment when we're not enjoying life. So, yeah, but it's also, as I mentioned before, I know, right? It's also the most, it really is, as far as the evolutionary process is concerned, it is the most important point. So we really need to get it. I'm thinking, I'm just going to go back and check in with being for a moment. And then I'm going back into questions. I usually do questions straight up through the whole Saturday session, but see if there's a healing that we can do to help all of us upgrade the grace by which we navigate the purification process. Cluing in with our group. Oh, and by the way, as I close my eyes and I kind of check in with everybody, I am reminded that the silence that we had this morning was supreme. I absolutely loved and adored our group silence together. It was really deep, and it's not uncommon for a very deep silence to be followed by a dramatic or dynamic purification. Just saying, that can happen. Because that deep silence, that deep dive is going to give rise to a new reality. So the first thing happening is a download for everyone that provides the energy signature of the purification phase of the operation. So we just get a nice, clear, concise understanding of what are those mechanics of purification. And you'll notice that the mechanics of purification, even though they've been a bit vilified over the course of time and based on cultural conditioning and so forth, ancestral cultural, which we actually did a healing for yesterday, in and of themselves, the laws of nature that give rise to purification are not inherently evil or bad. They're just, they tend to sit in the gap between the two modes of divine expression. One is the outward stroke of expression, and the other is the inward stroke. And because the outward and the inward stroke kind of cancel each other out, you get this point of tension at the peak. So what we're doing is we're looking into the tension, and we're getting used to what that tension looks like. What are its constituent parts? How does each person's nervous system interact with that tension, where you've got the expansion going on, and then there's a collapse that begins after there's this expansion and collapse. This is it's an extremely important thing that's happening right now. It sounds like I'm digressing, but I'm not. We have to understand that by going into this as a healing, this is also where our collective is right now. Because all over the world, the tension that is giving rise to the possible chance of worldwide conflict, starting with the conflict in Eastern Europe, that potential, which I promised to address today because many questions came in about it, is born of individuals kind of taking sides on all sorts of issues. And why did our world go from the events of the last 2 years, whose names will not be mentioned, directly into this point where we've kind of separated ourselves out to two different sides, and both sides feel that they are right. And the fact is that the laws of nature they arise in pairs that cancel each other out or complement each other, depending on how you look at that. But they arise in pairs that create wholeness or totality. And so if we go just, if a person aligns themselves, well, I'm going with these laws of nature, or I'm going with these laws of nature, then it's creating this dynamic context for our entire world to explore the tension that's right in between those two stances. There's tension right there, and it is a very uncomfortable place to stand. And so most people will not stand there. Most people are avoiding. That's what's coming up from the healing session. From the healing is going in and it's eliminating, it's purifying habits, impressions, memory patterns, cellular, all down to the cellular level memory patterns of avoiding the point of tension, avoiding the purification, avoiding stepping into one's essentially dharma as a human being, because our job as human beings is to work this area of creation. Avoiding it, avoiding the purification. Resistance makes it worse, of course, right? And we talked about that yesterday. What we resist persists and all that. Some beautiful statements came up from the group yesterday on that account. So yeah, clearing resistance, clearing justifications, clearing fear, of not knowing, fear of the unknown. We covered that yesterday, all out to an ancestral level. Fear of the unknown, fear of making mistakes, fear of being imperfect, fear of what other people will think of us if we show up imperfectly somehow. And of course, naturally, the purification rises in the first place because there's some imperfect showing up, right? Like the creator creates the creation, and then at some point it's like, no, we've done enough of that, and that's no longer perfect, and it's no longer allowing my full potential, so it dissolves again, right? So naturally, showing up as imperfect, oh, look, I've got a hair sticking out right there. No. Oh, look, I could show you all my imperfections. Oh, look at wrinkles. No, you know what I'm saying? I mean, inevitably, imperfection shows up at the material level of creation, inevitably. But fear of that. So all those fears, and those fears, and there's like, the fears have had a chance to diversify and expand and break down and show up in lots of different ways. And they absolutely tie in to the weapons of mass destruction on our earth. I was doing a healing to eliminate weapons of mass destruction earlier in the week with a group of people, and dear group. And the point that surprised me was that when we put our attention on the weapons of mass destruction, that they showed up more as fear at an energetic level than as anger. I was sure they were going to show up as anger. Like, what's an explosion? Anger, right? But no. Their presence on earth is more fear than it is anger. We did a big healing at that time to eliminate them because the current conflict in Eastern Europe represents the opportunity for our earth to eliminate all weapons of mass destruction. And it was brought to my attention today by one of our participants that needs to include not just nuclear warheads, but also chemical weapons of destruction. As we know over the experiment of the last couple of years, that we need to understand that there are laboratories all over the world that are exploring different ways that the chemical reality of our world can help purify humanity off the face of the earth. Something like that. Something like that. Best way I can say it. So the fear shows up in the point of tension between these two fundamental strokes of consciousness, one that comes out to the relative and one that goes back to the absolute. I'm feeling it clearing from the solar plexus, clearing also up here in the neck throat area, which is where we express. So interesting, solar plexus and neck throat are like a sandwich. They sandwich the heart chakra area. And the heart chakra area, this area where we understand our experience in its most fundamental, pure, very true way, is able to produce a light medicine that radiates. It's a radiant. Sometimes light medicines, they pick up one of those little cords of light in the astral body and they go like a laser onto a certain spot. But right now it's just radiant. And the radiance of this light medicine, which is 90% compassion and mercy, is stretching open to the, it's radiating out, and it's filling up the neck throat area, and it's filling up in the solar plexus area. And it's speaking to the central nervous system, particularly the autonomic nervous system, which reacts and responds to fear. Like that's like one of our principal fear reactions comes through the way the autonomic nervous system responds. So the autonomic nervous system is also washing in this light medicine. And this patterning, which is like communicating to the nervous system a new way to function, a more flexible and stable way to function, flexible for the sympathetic and stable for the parasympathetic, and then it switches and becomes stable for the sympathetic and flexible for the parasympathetic. And it's interesting that it's in the crossover. It's interesting that it's crossing over. I guess that's what we're talking about, this point of tension, right, between the outward and the inward strokes. And so what happens is the value of truth from both sides of the political spectrum are able to cross their truths over to each other. So our bodies are doing it. Our physical bodies are doing it, where stability is increasing in the sympathetic nervous system and adaptability is increasing in the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's giving rise to an overall upgrade to the autonomic nervous system. But it also makes each one of our physiologies humming or vibrating with a specific energy frequency that supports the ability for the divergent perspectives that are so prevalent on our earth right now to see a graceful path forward to share each other's truths. Because there's truth on both sides. There's truth on all sides. Every person's point of perspective is the truth coming through their nervous system or their being. But this is like a functional gift to our world, that your nervous systems just did it spontaneously, and then I recorded it back to you. I reported it back to you. But there is a law of nature or a dynamic that allows the truth from the opposing positions to speak to each other and to come together to provide, like two eyes open, like a bigger, both sides are enhanced with a bigger view of what is the truth. And that's a gift, and it's a functional gift. It's not like you could give a particular light medicine, or you could give a matrix that could go and kind of sit and anchor some particular aspect. But no, this is a process. It's a process. It's a process that is coming through the unification of our healing collective and is being communicated. Thank you to my dear friend in London who put me on to leveraging the Schumann resonance to enhance the effectiveness of our energy healing work. The Schumann resonance is sitting up above the earth. Is it like a mile? I think it's about a mile above the earth, something like that. And it's a hum. It's a frequency that's resonating around the whole earth. And it's like an energetic internet. He sent me the recordings, and I listened, and I'm like, oh. So when our little group, this is like using a magnifying glass to enhance the effectiveness of our healing. We have a process. Your bodies did it completely spontaneously. Was it graceful? Was it painless? Yes. Was it effective? God willing. God willing. So what happens is, as our organized, as integrated, are collective, resonating with this process by which the parasympathetic and the sympathetic can cross over and share each other's gifts with each other, right? So one becomes more stable and the other one becomes more flexible. It resonates, it bounces up to the Schumann resonance. It bounces up there. And in the Schumann resonance, because it's like an energetic internet for the world, it's able to go into that field and it's able to propagate. It propagates. It's sent like a little message, and the field picks it up. And the field's like, oh, it picks it up. So I'm just feeling that. It picks it up and it propagates it out to the whole field of creation. In a sense, this is what we were doing in the past when we were doing big collective healings in our group consciousness, but I didn't realize the mechanic of it interfacing with the Schumann resonance. Now I know. So now I can communicate it to you. And does it apply to the conflicts between left and right? Heck yeah. But East and West, does it also apply to conflicts between East and West? Heck yeah. Heck yeah. So right there. So now I'm feeling this process, our process that you guys initiated it. I did not see it coming. It's like an etheric skin of the earth. Yeah. This process is touching the field of conflict in Eastern Europe. The truth and the blessings on both sides of the spectrum. The truth. And always purification is about revealing a deeper truth. Always, always, always. Some forms on the surface of creation have risen up and they've been beautiful and interesting in their own way, but they're not allowing for the full expression of truth. So now we're here. Now the full truth. And it's like a rain of truth. It's like a snowstorm of truth. The individual and the collective. All these different forms. The individuals, it's interesting how as this offering propagated itself, how it shows up in different ways in different parts of the world. And one of the ways has to do with individual finding their truth, finding the truth through this, we could say, energetic global internet. There's certain words I'm not going to say in today's webinar, but my husband was watching a video of somebody being interviewed in a country on the eastern part of our world, I won't say where, and the interviewer said, so what do you think about the conflict that's going on in your neighboring country and sending troops over to the neighboring country? And the man said, well, that's not happening. If that were happening, the news would have told me. This was like yesterday. It's like already old news for the rest of the world, but certain individuals are being kept from the truth. Maybe not all. Maybe not all. Maybe not the families of servicemen, but maybe them too. Because I know how it is in the United States. I have friends whose sons are in the military, and the sons will say to their mother, I'm going somewhere, I cannot tell you where, and I cannot tell you what I'm doing. And the mom's just like, I think he's in the Middle East somewhere, but I really don't know. Yeah. It's complicated. And it has a lot of, at the surface, the truth has a lot of facets and it's complicated. At the subtle, it's not so complicated. This is simple. We're going through a world purification for the sake of emerging at a whole new level. And, absolutely one of the goals is to eliminate these forms of mass destruction from our Earth. We don't realize that we've been going around with them, that since the middle of the last century, when nuclear warheads were created, that lots of them were created. We forget, right? Because there hasn't been a threat of using them like all this for quite a long time. Well, all of a sudden there's this threat that like this is something that could happen. And suddenly there's this awareness of, oh my gosh, there's been this incredible potential to destroy the world many, 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 many times over. Like a single submarine carrying nuclear warheads can destroy the world like 100 times or more. Any one of them can, and there are hundreds of them. So I was going to look up actually the numbers and the statistics this morning before our meeting, but I got so busy with my business that I didn't get a chance to look up those numbers. Otherwise, I'd be throwing numbers at you. But anyone, I suppose it can be looked up through Google or through somewhere, how many submarines have nuclear warheads on them and how many nuclear warheads are on each submarine. And so it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so what happens is it creates an underlying fear and tension in the entire family of humanity. And no, we have to put our attention on the point of tension. We have to go to the tension. We don't want to go to the point of tension because it's uncomfortable. But remember, our attention is being. It is the grace of the divine that heals. It's the grace of the divine that heals. So we have to put the grace, we're intentionally putting the grace of the divine that heals on the part that hurts the most. That's how we heal. Yeah. It unties the knots. Yeah. And so what happens and what we've been experiencing as a collective for a really long time is people go around with a little underlying tension and they think, gosh, I don't sleep well, or I feel uneasy and I feel fearful, or I feel that I worry about things I probably shouldn't worry about, and on long list. And they blame themselves. They blame themselves for this underlying tension. Whereas the fact that our bodies know that these forms have been created on our earth, which really don't belong here. And now it's not just those, it's also these chemical type of like viruses and stuff like that. We might have to cut out the word that I just used. I used a bad word, the V word. I used a V word. But you get the idea that there are these structures that are being created for the sake of purification, massive purification. And the purification reflects back onto the object, to the symptom. And this is how we do it with ourselves personally as well. If we have a part of the body that feels sick, we look at the sick part of the body, and the sick part of the body tells us exactly where we have to focus attention in order to heal the karma, the underlying karma, the seed of that illness. So this is, we can think of them like a sick part of our earth and in our human collective. And we put our attention there. And with the help, with the support of the Schumann resonance, which allows the healing intention to propagate and to go exactly where it needs to go. Just like searching something up on the internet, you go out into that field of infinite pieces of information, you pluck the one that you need. Same thing, same. So as I said before, 90% or 95 or more is this impulse of compassion and mercy. And then behind that, I'm also seeing forgiveness. We have to have forgiveness because those players on the global level who have created these forms, each one just created a little part of it. Each one just thought, well, I'm just part of the machine and I'm doing some little bit. And no one was thinking, hey, I could be famous by being the person who killed the earth. Like, who thinks that? That can't possibly. No. Nobody. No. Here we go. It's turning. Here, it's in the gap. Down here in the gap between the unmanifest and the manifest. The energy's sort of rotating, we could say. It's making little loops, giving rise to the purification. And this elimination of the influences and structures on our earth that are specifically designed to eliminate all life, this elimination of these is a huge, huge, important thing that is one of the great blessings and outcomes of this particular time of purification in which we are currently living right there. And what I'm seeing happening is now awareness is very subtle because it's down here turning and it's going into the points in the history of the earth. Any point where there's a virtual but fairly high potential for those weapons to be used. We're going into those points and we're dissolving all the laws of nature that support the use of them. The laws of nature are manifested from this area right here, from my necklace area. So they call the wish fulfilling tree. So the heart center is like the big wisdom center. And then here, there's a dynamic relationship between the part that expresses in the material relative field of creation and the wisdom of the heart. And so right there in that area, and it includes this, it's a kind of power. It's the laws of nature that allow the expression to come fully out to the relative right here. So it's a combination of this energy and this wish fulfilling tree energy. This is the wisdom of your body. And we're using our bodies as the instruments for the healing. Can you see that? There's like a tie-in between the way the physiology is in this area and its activation. We put our attention on it. It wakes up the laws of nature there. It wakes up the devatas in the physiology in this area. And then as a collective, it beams up to the harmoniously like integrated, each one of us with our different, slightly different perspective, slightly different structure of this part. Everybody's vocal mechanism is slightly different, right? Some people have high voices and some people have low voices. You know what I'm saying? So it's we provide like multiple, like the eye of a bee, right? With multiple perspectives of the same particular energy enlivenment goes there, and it's going specifically into all these points in the future, virtual points where these weapons had the potential to manifest their destructive effect, basically. And this intelligence is used to basically disarm them. What? From the level of the heart, right? Somebody has to push a button. Somebody has to push a button. So from the level of the heart, yes, sensations in the stomach, uncomfortable. Any uncomfortable is purification. So if anybody's feeling any uncomfortable, then go into caring for yourself mode. Just caring for yourself. Shift the attention into your own physiology and just, I love you and my my inner truth and what's right for me and how much I am supposed to engage and so forth. Because that brings up a beautiful point about purification and another area that's clearing, and it's absolutely clearing from us through us to the whole collective as well, especially over to Eastern Europe. God bless all the Eastern Europeans and those who are with us and those who are not with us in this video today. The energies long-standing, clearing from the ancestral lines of self-sacrifice for the sake of others. That patterning, it tends to be a little bit more in women than in men, but it's on both sides. Ancestrally, it's on both sides. And clearing beliefs that self-sacrifice and martyrdom are spiritual. Heck no, completely unsustainable. Lots of like intense, like a kind of almost cathartic energy is moving into the collective there to support the release of that idea of, oh, hey, I could be at the center of a great, massive sacrifice and martyrdom of humanity. Well, how about not? How about not? How about that's not sustainable? And it's like a really old patterning. The new patterning comes in right away, along with it, like riding on this same wave, which is transcend, transcend, transcend. Because it's by dissolving back into the source of creation that a new seed is born that accomplishes the goal in a much more graceful way. It accomplishes the goal in a way that is life supporting rather than life damaging. Right there, under that, we're clearing at a massive level, the whole earth level, feelings of worthlessness and unworthy and disposable and nobody cares and I'm not important. And that's clearing from all the hearts, Gosh, this Schumann resonance is helping us a lot. I think we've done some kind of world or global healings in some past webinars, but never to this extent, ever, ever. Thank you all for being the ones who are here for this. So beautiful, so beautiful, so beautiful. Just, I'm saying the beautiful over and over because I'm feeling the churning that's occurring down here in the gap between the manifest and the unmanifest level of creation, and how so gently and so tenderly, like compassionately, this elimination of the feeling of I'm useless, I'm worthless, I'm helpless, I'm not good enough, I'm disposable, that energy, so gently, so kindly and empathetically clearing that from people so that the clearing itself doesn't come on the vehicle of martyrdom. For a lot of people, it's able to come on the vehicle of healthy family relationships. And this is giving rise to a shift in priorities for a lot of people. And that shift in priorities leads to awakening of Our Lady from Hawaii. The shift in priorities gives rise to a shift in comprehension of self. It gives rise to an expansion of sense of self, ego, expansion of ego, integration of across the whole spectrum of ego, from infinitely large to infinitely small. Ego is very close. If you look at the Vedic alignment, the 8 prakritis go from the 5 senses, then mind, intellect, and ego is right down here, right next to the ocean of being. Ego's big. Ego is another way of understanding one's causal form. Understanding ego in its truth, in its true nature, is another way of understanding one's causal nature. Lots of facets. I'm just feeling that, another wave just penetrating through here.